Yasujiro Ozu, one of Japan's most revered filmmakers, crafted a body of work that is as meditative as it is beautiful. His films explore the quiet rhythms of everyday life, often focusing on family dynamics, generational conflict, and the tensions between tradition and modernity. He is not only one of the most important filmmakers in Japan, but has influenced directors across the world. But with over 50 films to his name, where do you start? Ozu's work can feel daunting at first glance, especially since his films often share similar themes, settings, and even actors. Luckily, I recently moved to Japan, so me and a couple of friends headed out to Kamakura, where several of Ozu's films take place, to explore and get some insight into what you can expect from his movies, and discover the best entry point to his filmography. Yasujiro Ozu was born on December 12, 1903 in Tokyo, where he lived until he was 9 when his father sent his family to live in Matsusaka in Mie Prefecture. He was an indifferent student who didn't make it past middle school, preferring to drink, hang out with friends, and of course, watch movies. At 20, he and his family moved back to Tokyo, where he got a job as a cameraman at Shochiku and directed his first film in 1927. The story goes that he got into a fist fight at the Shochiku cafeteria, and when the head of the studio called him in to explain himself, Ozu offered him a script. The moral of the story: wake up and choose violence. Japanese films were mostly silent at this time, and he focused on comedies infused with social criticism. During World War II, he was sent to Burma to make propaganda films for the war effort, but ended up in Singapore, where, instead of working, he focused on reading, playing tennis, and watching foreign movies unavailable in Japan. He got away with this because, well, the army had bigger problems. At the end of the war, not wanting to be tried as a war criminal, he burnt the script and whatever footage he'd shot in Singapore. He returned to Shochiku Studios in 1946. The films of his post-war career, starting with Late Spring, represent his most celebrated works, as they show a significant refinement in writing, style, and direction. He spent the remainder of his life living and working here, in Kamakura, a city south of Tokyo where Shochiku's Ofuna Studios was located. Once the de facto capital of Japan for almost 150 years, it boasts many important historical landmarks such as temples, shrines, and natural wonders. Here, traditional culture stands side by side with modernity, making it an ideal place for Ozu to set many of his films. This is Kamakura, where Ozu lived and worked. Several of his films take place here, including Early Summer, which featured the Great Buddha right behind me. Come with me as we take a closer look. Early Summer follows a young woman named Noriko, a common name in Ozu's movies, as she navigates pressure from her family to marry. Though Ozu's films usually focused on home life, and Early Summer is no exception, I can't help but feel like even Ozu couldn't resist putting this bad boy in one of his films, especially since it was in his own backyard. But before we explore any further, let's do a rundown of some of the major themes of his pictures. Generational conflict. Ozu frequently explored the relationships between older and younger generations. Parents worry about their children's marriages and experience the heartache of watching them leave home, while the children often find it difficult to convey their own feelings and desires to their parents. Transition and change. Ozu's films often meditate on the impermanence of life, frequently focusing on children leaving home for marriage or the loss of a parent. Every day in the mundane. Instead of dramatic twists, Ozu fixated on the subtleties of daily life. His scenes almost always take place at home, at the office, on vacation, at the theater, at a restaurant, or at a bar. If there is a major life event, like a wedding or a death in the family, we hear about it in conversation after the event has passed. It's the endless little moments, not the major life events, that make up his characters' lives. Modernity versus tradition. As Japan underwent rapid modernization in the post-war era, Ozu's films often juxtapose traditional values against modern life. In Ozu films, characters usually fall back on traditional values despite the changing times. Loneliness and alienation. Many of Ozu's characters grapple with feelings of isolation or alienation, often as a result of a death in the family or the marriage of a child. It doesn't take long to realize you're watching an Ozu film. His pictures have a very heavy focus on art direction. Perfectly symmetrical compositions make every frame a painting. In 1958, he switched to shooting in color, which is shocking for somebody who made so few stylistic changes across his career. There are multiple ways to interpret this dedication to order. It can reflect an idealized life of the Japanese middle class, or it can represent how orderly the characters live their lives, abiding by tradition even as modernity is knocking at the front door. Or it can reflect the beauty of the characters' lives before life, death, and marriage separate them. Every object within the frame, whether a piece of clothing, a sake cup, a mountain, or the world's greatest tea kettle, I want that tea kettle, is carefully selected for how it contributes to the overall composition and mood of the scene. The camera is always placed to make the shot perfectly symmetrical. While on my trip, I was actually able to track down where some of the props used in his movies were housed. Normal people do stuff like that, right? Behind me is the Kawakita Film Museum here in Kamakura. It is home to many of the props that Ozu used in his films, including the red tea kettle from Equinox Flower. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to try to steal it. Okay, so how are we going to do this? I am going to try to run in the back because I'm pretty sure it's in a box somewhere while you create a distraction.
Me? I gotta create the distraction?
Yeah.
Why me?
You're an incredibly distracting person.
What about me is distracting?
You're a 6'6" foreigner in Japan and you look like Keanu Reeves wearing roadkill.
We should draw straws.
It might affect my visa if I steal things here. Let's just move on.
If it shows up in a prop in a future video, it's a recreation.
Recreation. Ozu is famous for his tatami shots, or low-angle shots from the perspective of someone sitting on the floor. They reinforce the viewer's connection to the domestic space and the characters' lives. Shooting a traditional Japanese home from a low angle allows all the lattice work, frames, and other lines throughout the room to point directly toward the subject, making them the focal point of the composition. Ozu described himself as a tofu maker. He could make boiled tofu, fried tofu, stuffed tofu, but if you wanted something else, you needed to go to another restaurant or another filmmaker. This sameness is prevalent in all of Ozu's post-war films. The characters and the plots are very similar, there is a meticulous dedication to symmetry, and even the names of the films sound similar, evoking seasons and nature. Late spring, early spring, late autumn, an autumn afternoon, early summer, the end of summer, equinox flower, floating weeds. Even the actors will look familiar, especially Setsuko Hara, who starred in 6 of Ozu's films. Chishu Ryu starred in all of his post-war movies, as he was kind of like a Bill Murray to Wes Anderson. Sometimes he starred in the movie, sometimes it was just a cameo, but he's always there. Actors usually reappear across his films in similar roles. Just a few examples include Hara as the daughter pressured to marry, Ryu as the family patriarch, and Haruko Sugimura as the sassy aunt, daughter, or neighbor. Kuniko Miyake frequently plays a housewife. Ryuji Kita, Nobuo Nakamura, and Shin Saburi are drinking buddies. Keiji Sada is marrying someone and being hot while doing it. And Ganjiro Nakamura is an incompetent father. Even this actress runs a restaurant in at least 4 of his pictures. This sameness across pictures makes it difficult to talk about one without talking about another. That's maybe why all the clips in this video look like they come from the same movie, but I swear they do not. Yet none of his films blur together. They each represent a unique experience that feels like it exists within its own cinematic universe, where everything is beautiful, balanced, and impermanent. Cutting to inanimate objects and landscapes, Ozu utilizes frequent pillow shots, still life images of objects, landscapes, or empty spaces that serve as transitions between scenes. These shots are not merely decorative, but carry thematic weight, often reflecting the passage of time or the emotional undercurrents of the narrative. The impermanence of life. A major theme in all of Ozu's work is that nothing lasts forever. Children grow up and leave home, parents die, and life goes on. He tells us that there are some tragedies and disappointments in life that can never be avoided. In Ozu, his life and films, Donald Ritchie said, "What remains after an Ozu film is the feeling that you have seen the goodness and beauty of everyday things and everyday people. You have had experiences that you cannot describe because only film, not words, can describe them. You are left with a feeling of sadness, too, because you will see them no more." If you want to start watching Yasujiro Ozu films, I recommend starting with the Noriko Trilogy. Late Spring, Early Summer, and Tokyo Story are his most acclaimed films, and they give you a good idea of his style and the themes he usually tackles. Next, I recommend his color pictures. These are some of the most beautiful films you're ever going to watch, and they're a continuation of the themes and style that he had going on in the Noriko Trilogy.
Speaking of themes and styles, if you liked the theme and the style of this video and you want to see a little bit of the behind the scenes, check it out on my channel. My name is Selden. People call me P-chan here. I'm also living here in Japan, and I'm going to school here for Japanese language. And so if you want to learn a little bit more about some travels and a little bit more about places to go, and a little bit more about learning Japanese language, make sure to check out my channel right here somewhere. No idea.
When you're done with his color pictures, go back to the 1950s and check out his other films that weren't from the Noriko Trilogy. After that, you're probably a super fan, and you can go see his pre-war films, which include a bunch of silent movies. Thank you so much for watching. More videos of me talking about Japanese cinema on location are on the way, so make sure to like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments which Ozu film is your favorite, or which film you're most excited to see. Ja ne!